How's it going, crypto community? This is Jade, the XRP Martian, and I'm doing a video about a tweet made by Donald Trump recently, actually. Now, if you don't already follow me on Twitter, be sure to hop over on Twitter and throw me a follow, where I usually tweet out things that I do videos on before I actually do the video on them. So if you really want to be up to date on whatever the news is that's coming out, hop over on Twitter, throw me a follow here. If you don't have a Twitter, just make an XRP Twitter. The XRP community is massive on Twitter, and most of us only have accounts dedicated purely to XRP. That's what mine's here for. And so, without any further ado, let's jump straight into what we got from Donald Trump today. Now, I have my take on this, right? But we'll come back to that. We'll start with Donald Trump's tweets. So, he started by saying, "I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money, and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity. Similarly, Facebook's LibreCoin virtual currency will have little standing on dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to the same banking regulations just like other banks, both national and international. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will stay that way. It is called the United States dollar." Alright, so, as you see, Alex Cobb was quick to throw a comment on here, and he's basically just pointing out the utility inherent in XRP, which is a good point, great point. But what I want to talk about is what Trump really said here. What did Trump really say, you're asking now, XRP Martian? Well, Trump said, "Get ready. Regulation is coming." And what I also said in my tweet is, oh yeah, and if you didn't know, Ripple is helping bring that regulation because they're the ones working with the Trump administration to bring about the Faster Payments Task Force and also a financial system that creates economic activities, non-bank financials, fintech, and innovation. And this was published by the U.S. Department of the Treasury on July of last year. So it's been a whole year since this Executive Order 13772 signed into effect by Donald Trump. Let's see if we get an exact date on here. I'm assuming it's just at some point in July, though. So what's interesting, though, is if you come down here, you'll find that in the Ripple is here listed in the firms who are the participants in the executive order arrangement process. In other words, these are organizations who had a direct say in the lobbying process. In other words, the hammering out of the fine details in regards to what's allowed and what really isn't allowed. Like where you create your clauses of protecting the public from less than apologies for the tweets that you're hearing, but from protecting a consumer from less than genuine offerings, such as BitConnect, right? Great example. Now, there are other examples that are less obvious that should probably not be investment options. Now, I'm not saying that Bitcoin should not be an option, mind you, because I do hold a little bit of Bitcoin still. But Donald Trump is saying that it should not be an option. That's important to think about and keep in mind when it comes to the regulations that we're about to see. So to everybody out there holding Bitcoin, Donald Trump is not your friend. But for those who are invested in XRP, well, not only is Ripple listed here, who is directly developing protocol and applications and, fintech on top of the XRP ledger, but also R3, whose very first currency, the base currency that they based their framework around, is also XRP. Now, R3 has said that they are going to enable the ability for multiple cryptocurrencies to become utility based upon their settlement platforms. However, as of right now, Ripple is the first listed and the most efficient that they have. So being the most efficient, that's the one that the customers are going to want, right? If you can save 10% on a transaction, or you can save 30% on a transaction, which transaction would you choose? Oh, and one of these is going to be done in half the time of the other. Maybe a tenth of the time, maybe a thousandth of the time. Who knows the difference on those other platforms as far as speed compared to Ripple's, right? Point being that it is cheaper. It is the most efficient. We know that much. So banks, they care about the bottom dollar. How much are you saving them? And that's what they're going to go with, whichever one saves them the most. When this all becomes legally frameworked out, everything's hammered out, so that these banks can actually start investing in this ecosystem without fear of being taxed or fined into oblivion. Much like Deutsche Bank is experiencing right now. If you read any news on what's going on with Deutsche Bank right now, they are bleeding employees. I think that it was like 18,000 employees are at risk of losing their job, or losing their job actively right now, because there are people who have already been fired as of Monday, starting this week, from the Deutsche Bank in a massive cutback. So let's be real. These financial institutions are not Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in Germany, right? These institutions are not in immortal entities, right? They can collapse. And so they have to operate within the framework of the law to avoid, fines that can destroy their internal revenue and make it impossible for them to then continue on, right? So, or they have to find a new route to restructure, to cut, costs in certain regions, to lay off 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 employees and maybe go to an automated system, maybe a decentralized system where they don't really need too many physical, people sitting at a physical place, right? Maybe they just need a lot of people who are able to sit at an online or a phone reception, for customer support. And you never know. It's hard to say what's actually going on behind the scenes in these organizations when they are doing these restructurings, but ultimately that's the intent. It's not to just go bankrupt. It's to, okay, let's cut as much as we can where we can, and put in some elbow grease and a little bit of ingenuity to find solutions that are far cheaper, that help us alleviate the pains that we're now experiencing because we had to cut all those jobs, right? Now, as all that ties into Ripple, why am I ranting about this? Well, for many people out there in the Bitcoin community, they like to sit there and attack the XRP community because XRP is flat. And why is this? Well, it's because, by and large, the crypto community has, this whole of our existence, refused to accept that we live in the real world. And regulation, whether you like it or not, can absolutely destroy your network. It can keep it suppressed for decades and decades and decades while they push their system that they feel is trustworthy and decentralized enough and in an appropriate nature that will provide a long-term systemic stability for the global environment. And that's essentially the Interledger protocol system. Now, does that mean that XRP is the ultimate winner? Most likely, but we can't say for certainty yet, right? That's what David Schwartz says. That's what everybody over at Ripple and everywhere says. And so I'm just going to repeat their own words right back at you. This isn't a set in stone, absolute assured thing that Ripple is going to be the ultimate successor, R3 is going to be the ultimate successor, and then that means XRP is the ultimate successor. But we're definitely going to take a big chunk of that pie. We're going to take a massive chunk of that global pie, and it looks like the way that Donald Trump is now posturing, that Bitcoin is not going to be the first in this upcoming race to new highs, because it's looking like the US may be about to start pushing some serious FUD on to Bitcoin. So that's going to make the ecosystem flee Bitcoin. depending on how far this goes, depending on if this is the end of it. But I have a feeling that because this came from Donald Trump and he's directly addressing Bitcoin and crypto, calling Bitcoin based on its value based on nothing. Now, I know that many people in Bitcoin, many people, myself included, are like, well, you really can't say that because fiat's literally printed out of nothing. At least Bitcoin has a fixed supply, right? So I'm not going to say Bitcoin's not going to go up and it's not going to maintain some degree of value. But what I am saying is that its little bull run that it's had is going nowhere soon. It's going flat. And I don't know how long it's going to go flat for, but rest assured, it's going to either go flat or it's going to go into a downward trend back towards 6,000. That's my opinion, not investment advice. XRP, on the other hand, I expect that we are probably going to bottom out around 29 cents, maybe even as low as 28 cents, 27 cents range even, depending on what happens in the next few weeks as far as how Bitcoin responds and how the ecosystem responds to the fact that, technically speaking, Donald Trump is praising assets like XRP, XLM, and any other that is actively working with regulators to bring this new digital ecosystem, digital economy into fruition to the benefit of everybody, right, including Donald Trump. So while I sit here and talk about Ripple being and XRP being the one that's most likely to win because they are here right on your screen in front of you, contained as a participant in the executive order engagement process, having had their say on how this regulatory framework is being established. And then you have all this, I mean, I don't know of any other digital asset group that's in this ecosystem, right? Just XRP. So, you know, do we have anybody from Chainlink or no? You know, so there's the C's, no Chainlink. So yeah, it's very intriguing that Donald Trump is now coming out about this and talking about how this is it's an unregulated crypto asset, and that this space is enabling, unlawful behavior, drug trade. So, he's pouring on the FUD, right? And we'll call it FUD, but ultimately it doesn't matter that I'm calling it FUD, because the average investor, the average American non-investor, is going to see that and be like, haha, yeah, told you, it's a scam, right? Now, I'm out here saying, well, he might be calling Bitcoin a scam, but we know, because we see what he's doing, right? Everybody knows that saying, right? Watch what they do, not what they say. Well, what's Donald Trump doing? He's working on executive orders to create a regulatory framework for the digital asset ecosystem in combination with Ripple Labs, R3, and that is all to the benefit of the XRP ecosystem and the legitimate digital asset ecosystem outside of that, right? So, as always, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope you look forward to the regulations coming in, because we've been waiting forever, and that's what this screams at the end of the day, no matter what, right? Stay calm. What Donald Trump's really saying is regulations are coming. I've been Jade, the XRP Martian. If you've enjoyed my content, please be sure to hit that like. Also, if you're new, hit that subscribe and ring that bell so you can stay up to date with all the newest cryptocurrency related news content that I come up with or find out there on the internet, right? So, as always, I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you in my next video on Mars.